Good day, fashion friends. In today's tutorial, I am going to show you how I took a vintage mink cape that I purchased at an estate sale that fell apart when I attempted to clean it, and I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. However, the idea that I came up with, I ended up making more money off of the upcycled items rather than what I would have made had I sold the capelet undamaged on its own. Stay tuned. So what happened was I purchased a vintage mink capelet at an estate sale, and it had been stored in the basement. And when you do not store fur properly, it tends to dry out and get what is called dry rot. And because it was so old and had not been stored properly, it was dry rotted. Well, I didn't know that until I did the research. I attempted to clean it. I mixed up a solution and was spraying the cleaning solution on and combing it, and it just began to fall apart. Broke my heart. I knew upon further research that trying to get it fixed would have cost me quite a bit of money to take it to a professional, and being that it was dry rotted, they may or may not have been able to repair it. So she sat in the corner of the laundry room for about 2 months and thought about what she did until I came up with an idea. What I did, I tore out the lining and I began to cut the mink into strips, and I started wrapping it around hoops and started making jewelry with it. So I do various sizes and shapes of hoop earrings. So I do small, I do medium, I do the large. I've done bracelets. I did one ring upon request, and it has to be a specific type of ring for me to be able to get the mink on it and look right. I have applied it on a couple vintage purses and just added like a mink strip. I've also done that with a fox fur that I purchased that was already damaged. One of the necklaces that I currently have, if you look on the back, this was silver and just kind of looked like one of those like collar necklaces. And since it was stiff, I thought, ooh, I could put mink on that. And so that's what I did. So I have this necklace, I have another necklace where I wrapped mink around some long beads, and it was just a little bit here and there. That one has sold. And I did a choker one time. So I sourced these metal chokers and I wrapped the mink all the way around. And this is the last one that I have left. So in today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how I wrap earrings, bracelets, necklaces, anything that I could glue anything to and make it into mink jewelry. So for today, I'm just going to take these semi-large oval-shaped hoops. They are hollow, so they are lightweight. And I am going to wrap these with mink and kind of show you, because it's not as easy as it sounds. You have to pay attention to the way that the fur is laying. And then if you don't cut a long enough piece, or if you don't have a long enough piece, when you add another piece, you have to make sure that it matches in color and density. Because if you don't, then you can get some color variances. Like these hoops are a little thinner than what I usually like. But if they sit in a container, which they do in between my vendor markets, you just give them a little shaky shake and it'll fluff them right up. But you can see the difference between the two because the section that I cut from was different, if that makes sense. Believe it or not, certain areas where when you cut the mink, some spots come out a little thicker than others. Now, I will note, I do tend to save all of my scraps because I never know what size I might need. There might be something where I just need like a little tiny piece. Who knows? These are some strips that are left from previous cuts. But again, I have to go through and like this is a nice piece. Like see how nice and dense that is. And then we get to this area and it's not quite as dense. So one thing I do check is, because it's going to be wrapped, see the difference from here to here. And yes, this is a thicker, wider piece, but still you just have to, you can see and feel the difference in the density of the fur. So you do have to pay attention to that. Otherwise your piece will come out uneven. And then, especially if you're doing a necklace like this, you can't cut a piece long enough. So you're gonna have to piece it together, and you wanna make sure that the density of your fur matches all the way around so that it looks uniform. Now, when you are cutting strips, you want them to be about 1/4 of an inch wide. So as I said here, this is nice fur on this end, but it's a little too wide. So I am going to use a box cutter, and you're going to cut the fur from the back. You don't want to use scissors, and you don't want to cut from the front, because then you're going to cut the actual fur off, and then you're going to have bald spots. Now, normally I would use a ruler if I was using a bigger piece, but because this piece is so little of a difference, I am just going to kind of eyeball it a little bit. And you can't always follow the lines, because the lines don't always tell the truth. Because as you can see on the back, this is stitched into a V. So these are going at an angle. So you don't want to really follow your lines, because otherwise you're not going to have a straight piece. Okay, so as I said, I just want to trim a little bit off of this piece here. So I'm going to hold this down with a ruler. And again, when you're cutting this, especially if you're using a sharp box cutter, you want to be very careful that you're only cutting the leather. And sometimes getting started can be a little bit challenging. So you just want to be careful. And sometimes those threads will throw you off, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to be perfect. Now, as you can see, this is just coming apart very nicely, and I'm not losing any of my fur. That little spot, there we go. And you're just going to pull this apart and then trim that last little piece off. And we'll save that for something. The next thing you want to do after you trim a piece is you're going to want to kind of give it a little brush to pull off any excess. I usually do this over a trash can, just to get any loose hairs off and out of my way so they don't get stuck in the glue. And yes, there will be fur everywhere by the time you get done. So just save the cleanup until later, and it's going to be everywhere, I promise. Now, because this is so dry, it's actually kind of like cracky, if that's even a word. I don't think it is. So what I like to do, because I can't really wet this, is I will go through and I will just kind of work the leather and kind of give it a little bit of a curve where it's going to be more supple to work with. And this is only if you have a piece of fur where the backside is really, really dry. And I did have somebody ask me, well, if it's dry, is it going to fall apart? The answer is no, because it's glued onto the earrings. So it's not going anywhere. So the little strips aren't going to fall apart. Okay, this will also give you an idea of how the fur is going to lay when you start winding it. And again, I don't like this top piece. Look how, see the difference? Look how this is kind of scraggly. Although it may work if I put it close enough. Just not sure. You can just kind of wrap it around your finger just to see how it's going to look. Okay, now, before you start gluing, I know this isn't going to be a big enough piece to go all the way around. So I want to now find the next piece and make sure that the color and the density are going to match up. Now, this is a piece that was sitting over here. However, you can see the color difference. So we don't want to use this piece and then use this piece because it's not going to blend very well. So I'm going to grab this next piece, and it's kind of the same thing. So that's going to go, and then this is all I have left is this piece, and this other strip, and then my scraps. For reference, I sell the large hoops, and I also do shapes. Like I do heart shapes, I do the triangles. These are nice and easy to wrap because they're fat. And then these double earrings are, these double hearts that I get, I will wrap a different material on the inside and then wrap the mink on the outside. So I did a real pretty leopard print that had a lot of brown tones in it on the inside, and it just kind of peeks out, so it's really cute actually. And then I did the mink on the outside. Now I will say, doing shapes like this, like hearts and triangles, they are a bit tricky when you get to the corners to try to finish the corners here nicely. So it does take a little bit of practice and a little bit of playing around with the piece of fur that you have in order to kind of get those corners to come out. So what we're going to do, oh, I started to talk about pricing. So I do large hoops and the shaped hoops. I sell these for $25. I sell the medium hoops for $20. Necklaces, it depends on the size and how much fur I've used and how much time it took me to get it to work. I believe I have a price of like $25 or $30, $25, $35 on this one. Bracelets I do for $15 because they're super easy. And if you think about it, a pair of earrings is $25, a bracelet is one item, so I do bracelets for $15. And I will wrap bracelets, anything I can get my hands on. So sometimes you can get bangles that are scratched up, or maybe they have some rhinestones missing, and those would be good ones that you can repurpose because they're missing stones. Where you can repurpose them and wrap them in leather strips or in strips of fur, and it makes the bracelet good and it repurposes the fur as well. Now also when working with fur, you are going to encounter what looks like a ribbon where they attach where they attach the pelts together. Those you definitely don't want to use. I just leave them on until it's time for me to take them off. And I am going to cut from this strip so that way all of my color is going to be nice and even. So the first thing I'm going to do, I think, yeah. So I'm going to start cutting from this end. So the first thing I'm going to do is go through and rip this tiny little seam and take this ribbon off. And I'm just going to use that with my box cutter. And I'm sure you don't want to watch me do that. That will be very boring. Just to give you a quick idea of how I'm doing this. So I got it started by holding the ribbon out, and I don't know if you can see this, but I am cutting right along that little stitch that stitches the ribbon to the fur. And you definitely want to take your time because you don't want to cut the leather or the fur or whatever you want to call it. Make sure your box cutter is sharp, and you just want to hit those stitches and then pull it apart. So just take your time. I know, it sounds easy. Yeah, just wrap some jewelry with a mink strip, right? Super, super easy. No. Nope, there's a little more to it if you want it to look right. Let's put it that way. But that's all I'm doing is I do a little bit of ripping the stitch and then I pull the ribbon away. Okay, ribbon on both sides are removed, and now I am ready to cut me a nice long strip. The longer, the better, because then you don't have to piece them together. After very carefully cutting, I was able to get 3 nice long strips, and no, they're not perfectly even, but that's okay. It's okay. Again, because you've got threads going in different angles, it's very hard to stay on track. And with this being as dry as it is, again, it's hard to stay on track and make them perfectly straight. But it doesn't matter because once you wrap it, you're not going to notice anything, I promise. So this is the part where you find out which way your fur is going to lay. So looking at this piece, it's laying this way naturally. And I did go through and bend this to make it more pliable, like I had explained before. So I'm going to start, you can start at the front or the back, it doesn't matter. And you're going to start at an angle. This just so happened to be at a point. So you want to put that down first and hold it. And then you want to start wrapping just to see how your fur is going to lay. Now, this I can already tell that this fur is going to lay downward. Not sure if I want it to lay that way. Because what happens when you start wrapping, because it's laying this way, once this is glued, then you're going to have to use this hand to pull this fur back out of the way while you're wrapping and gluing. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip to the other side and see how it's going to lay that way. And then this end also has a big fat end to get started too, which you don't always want that. So sometimes it's a matter of you just gotta play with it first and see how it's gonna lay. And I think I like that much better. Yes. So if you can see that, how that's laying, it's going to fluff up, and that's what you want. I like that look better rather than being down. So I'm gonna start from this end. And I'm going to put this on at an angle and put a little dab of hot glue and fold that over and hold it before I start wrapping. Okay, that end is now secure, and I'm going to brush the fur up. Put a little bit of glue, and you don't have to glue it and you don't have to overlap. You can. If it overlaps, it's fine. But if you're overlapping, then you're going to end up wasting some of your fur. You want to make sure you keep it nice and tight. And I tend to glue like every other wrap. So I just did 2 wraps. Now I'm going to glue. And you're going to lay that leather right next to the next one. And just keep going around. I'm going to do one more wrap. And a little spot of glue. Oh, I just stuck my finger in it. I hate that. Bring this up. And you want to keep pulling that fur back so it doesn't get stuck in the glue. I'm going to do one more wrap. And you can see how nice that is starting to look. All right, I'm going to finish this off and then I'll be back when it's done. Okay, now when you get to the end, you want to, of course, glue your last bit down. And you're going to hold it. And then once that sets up, you'll trim off your excess piece. There we go. So I've got that little teeny tiny tab right there. Just going to put a little dab of glue. And hold. You will have a very lovely, fluffy, look at that. Look how nice that looks. Look at the way that that fur is laying. That's what makes the difference. You want that fur, when you put it on, you want it laying up. So that way it's nice and fluffy. Okay, getting ready to do the second one. And remember, if your fur is going this way, this is the end that you want to start with. You want to start with the end where the fur is going down. All right, the second one is done, and now we have a cute, fluffy pair of mink wrapped earrings. All right, next I'm going to do this choker. Unfortunately, this is the last one I have, and I don't think I can get these anymore. So I don't know what else I'm going to do. So same principle. You want a long piece if possible. Go through and bend this and soften it a little bit just to make it more bendable and easier to work with. Start at an angle and same thing, just wrap, wrap, wrap all the way around. All right, and once again, just wrap, wrap, wrap all the way around. I ran into a little problem when I was getting to the end here because this fur was in the way. So I took a washcloth that I keep here for cleanup and dusting, and I just stuck it in there to hold the fur out of the way. So if I can find these again, the next time I will start at this end and go the opposite direction so that way I don't run into the fur. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this inspired you that in the future, if you see a damaged leather coat or a damaged fur coat or capelet or a stole or anything like that that is damaged and you can get it for a really good price, that you will give it a second life. I know that some people do not like using real fur or leather. They have, you know, animal rights issues. I don't want to say issues, that's the wrong word, but I can't think of the word that I want to use. But some people are against using fur or leather. I get that. However, when we have an item that already exists and the animal already died to make a leather coat or a fur something or other, and now it's damaged, it's better to reuse it than to put it in the landfill, as far as I'm concerned, or throw it away, or just let it sit. Let's put it to good use. Let's use what we have and just do a little tiny part to keep things out of the landfill. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, love, peace, and thrift, and we'll catch you on the flip side.